Postman Pat's rainy day. "What a nasty day," said Pat. He was driving his post office van along Greendale, and it was raining. It had rained and rained for days and days, and it seemed that it would never stop. It rained so hard that the drops bounced off the road and made big puddles. The rain banged on the roof of the van and rattled on the windows. In the fields, the sheep huddled behind the walls. Jess looked out at the rain with drooping whiskers. He hated wet days. "What a day," said Pat. "It'll be wet letters and wet everything." It was still raining when he reached the village post office. "What weather," said Mrs. Goggins, "and just look at these letters." She had a warm fire in the back room, and she had clipped the letters to string washing lines to dry. Imagine them getting so wet, just being posted. I don't know what people do with them, and then the ink starts to smudge and you can't read the address. It's like a wet wash day, but worse. I see what you mean," said Pat, "but never mind, they'll soon dry. And you'd best look out for floods up the valley, Pat. There's more rain forecast, you know. It's enough to cause a landslide." "Don't you worry," said Pat. "I'll see that the post gets through. It'll take more than a bit of rain to stop me." He gathered up the damp pile of letters and parcels. "I'll be on my way then. Cheerio." When Pat stepped out into the street, he found that the rain had stopped, but the sky was full of black clouds. He delivered the village letters quickly, without getting wet, then set out along the country roads. Splashing through deep puddles, squelching up muddy tracks, and plodding through farmyards deep in mud, Pat was on his way. But who was this, standing at the roadside, soaking wet and covered in black mud? "Good heavens, it's Peter Fogg," said Pat. "But whatever's happened to him?" He stopped to find out. "It's this blooming rain," said Peter. "My old tractor bogged down in the bottom meadow. It's half flooded down there. Then I slipped in the mud up to my ears." "You look as if you've had a bath in it," said Pat. "I just about have," said Peter. "I'm off for some dry clothes. Then I'll get the new tractor to pull the old one out." "Good luck," said Pat. "I think it's fairing up now. Cheerio." When Pat reached the village school, some of the children were peering out to see if the rain had stopped. Charlie Pringle ran out for the letters. "Hello, Charlie," said Pat. "Where's Bill Thompson, then?" "He's off school today. They say there's flooding up at Thompson Ground. He'll be helping to get the sheep in." "Well, don't drop the letters. They've already had one wetting," said Pat. The other children came out whilst they were talking, and now they were having a great time, jumping over puddles and in puddles and sailing paper boats. It's nice to see someone enjoying the rain, thought Pat, but time was getting on, and he must be on his way. At Greendale Farm, Pat saw Peter Fogg again, looking much better after a good wash and a change of clothes. Peter showed Pat Mr. Pottage's new tractor with its bulldozer blade fitted. "That'll shift anything," he said. Pat was impressed. The next call was at the church. The Reverend Timms was having trouble with the rain too. "Good day, Pat," said the Reverend. "The rain rains on the just and the unjust." "Good heavens," said Pat. There were buckets and bowls and basins dotted about all over the church, with water dripping into each one. The drips kept falling in different places, so that the Reverend Timms had to keep moving the buckets and basins and bowls to catch them. He was dodging about all over the church, trying to keep up with the drops. "The church roof isn't what it was," he said. "I think we'll have to have an appeal." "I'll ask Ted Glenn to bring his ladders and have a look at the roof," said Pat. "He'll be able to fix it, I'm sure." "Oh, thank you, Pat. That would be a great help. Just leave the letters on the pulpit. There are no drips there. Goodbye." "Goodbye," called Pat. Just along the road, Pat met Sam Waldron with his mobile shop. "Take it steady, Pat," said Sam. "The roads are flooding further up the valley." "Oh, the old van will get me through," said Pat. He stopped to chat for a few minutes and bought a bunch of bananas from Sam. Jess was glad to stay in the van to keep out of the wet. He put his head out of the window to see what Pat was doing. A large raindrop fell right on his nose and made him sneeze. Poor Jess. They were getting into the hills when they saw Mrs. Thompson standing in the road, waving them to stop. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson, what's going on?" said Pat. "Oh, there are terrible floods in the top fields, Pat, and the waters brought tons of earth down and blocked the road. Come and see." Pat walked with her down the hill and round the next bend in the road. A great pile of rocks and earth and mud lay right across the road and in the fields on both sides. Nothing could get past. "Dear me," said Pat. "Can't we telephone the village for help?" "No, the lines are down." "Can't we walk round it?" "It's too dangerous with these floods. You could be buried if the land started to slip again." They heard an engine coming along the road. "Here comes Alf," said Mrs. Thompson. "He's going to try to get through with the tractor." "Do you think he can do it?" said Pat. "I'll have a jolly good try," Alf shouted. Off he went at top speed towards the pile of stones and earth. The engine roared, and the wheels were spinning and skidding in the wet mud. The tractor climbed over the first of the rubble, and then there was a loud bang as its nose hit a large rock. It was stuck. Alf tried again and again, but it wouldn't move. It took him another 10 minutes to back out of the mess, and the tractor was damaged at the front. "It's no good," said Alf. "We'll have to get help somehow." Then Bill came with his model airplane. "I've got a good idea," he said. "We can put a message on my plane, and I can fly it across to Greendale Farm to get help." "That's a good idea," said Pat. "Clever lad. We'll send an airmail letter." So Pat wrote a note. "Road blocked at Thompson Ground. Please send help. Pat." He tied it to the plane with a bit of Alf's binder twine. Bill stood on a little hill where he could just see the distant chimneys of Greendale Farm and twiddled his radio controls. He started the engine, and the airplane flew up into the sky. Bill steered it carefully, and it flew away towards Greendale Farm. "Away she goes," cried Pat. "That's better than a van. I wonder if I could swap mine for a helicopter." "I think it's landed now," said Bill. The Thompsons went off to see to the sheep, while Pat sat on the wall to wait. It seemed ages since the plane had gone. He was just thinking it must have crashed when he heard a powerful engine coming up the road on the other side of the blockage. It was Peter Fogg on the new tractor with the bulldozer blade. "Got your letter," he shouted. He drove into the rubble. The bulldozer blade pushed the earth and stones to one side of the road with a loud grinding and screeching of metal and stones and earth. The huge wheels bit into the ground and pushed the tractor forward. He was through. "Thanks, Peter," shouted Pat. "Right you are," shouted Peter. When Sam Waldron came along in his mobile shop, there was just enough room for him to get through. Pat followed in his van. He was glad to be on his way again. Pat called at farms and houses all along the valley, delivering letters and cards and parcels. He told everyone he met about the landslide at Thompson Ground and how Peter Fogg had come to the rescue. When he saw Ted Glenn by the road mending a wall, he remembered something else and stopped to talk to him. "Can you go and have a look at the church roof, Ted? The Reverend has the church full of buckets." "I'll pop along when I've finished this wall," said Ted. "Bloomin' rain. It makes no end of work." Miss Hubbard came past on her bike. She was on her way to choir practice. "I'd turn back if I were you," said Pat. "Or you might have to swim home." "Swim?" said Miss Hubbard. "It'll take more than a drop of rain to stop me." And on she went. "I'll be on my way too," said Pat. "Cheerio." As Pat wound his way along the valley, it looked like rain again, but there was a warm fireside to look forward to when all the letters had been delivered.